Effie, if I go inside, would you find her for me?
You would trust me to do that?
Other than my mom, you're the only person I can trust at all.
Trust, friendship and loyalty in this game is one thing which is rare, and the saddest thing about betrayal is it never comes from your enemies. It's always those close to you and those who you least expect it from. And this is what Mecca once told Zeke.
Zeke, what looks like lies and betrayal, I'm telling you, it's nothing but unconditional love.
But it's also those who have this unconditional love you need to be wary of, because although they may have your best interests at heart, they will still make moves behind your back. And so as we've learned recently from Raising Kanan, it's not your enemies that you should be worried about, it's your friends. And so having said that, Tariq needs to keep a close eye on those around him, because he's been surrounded by enemies and threats. They also come and go in this game, and just when you think you've got rid of one, another one appears, and sometimes they've been in front of you the entire time. And power really do a great job in making us look in one direction, but throwing us a complete curveball and sending us down another, especially because enemies and threats aren't always in the game. Sometimes they can end up being your professors who stick their nose into business they shouldn't, or they could even be from the family you work for. And essentially, that's what we're going to run through, the threats and enemies to Tariq St Patrick in Power Book 2 Ghost Season 3. In Season 1, Tariq had a choice to stay on a path which would have allowed him to collect his father's inheritance, but the price he had to pay was Tasha taking the fall for Ghost's murder. And if we learned anything across Power and Ghost, the one thing Tariq loves more than anything is his mom Tasha, and so he was never going to let her rot in prison. But this is also why we have to start by saying Tariq is his own worst enemy, because he has had countless of warnings and chances to leave the game.
Teach me the motherfucking game, Ghost.
You listen to me. I would fucking rather kill than to let you into this life.
And a lot of what has happened to Tariq since is definitely self-inflicted, and he had to hear Grandma Estelle lay down the truth in front of him, that he is one of the many reasons why the St. Patrick family is broken beyond repair. And we can look at different perspectives to say Ghost was to blame and so was Tasha, but that isn't the purpose of this video. So Tariq had a chance to leave the game at the end of Season 2, but Monet also in a way trapped him by killing Mecca before he could get his hands on the 2 million. But was Mecca ever going to give him the 2 million? I don't think so. And so Tariq will enter Season 3 working with the Tejadas and also still in the game. Now, one of Tariq's enemies and threats both throughout Season 1 and 2 has been Cane Tejada. Ever since Tariq was introduced to the Tejadas, Cane has always had this obsession, and it stems from a few factors. The fact Monet treats Tariq the way he wants his mom to treat him. He comes into the Tejadas in a position of power and in a role which in essence Cane wanted to play, and so he feels like he's being replaced by Tariq, which in truth he has. But this obsession over Tariq is crazy, and to the point where he thought he'd frame Tariq for Ramirez's murder, which is where Cane really overstepped the line. Although we did see Tariq and Cane working together at the end of Season 2, the exchange in the car definitely hints at this lack of trust, and rightly so. But it also tells us Tariq is someone who's able to put shit aside for the greater good, but he will never forget what Cane did, which also does bring me on to Diana. Now, although I don't think Diana is a threat as such, she's in a similar position as Cane, because Tariq knows he can't trust Diana, especially after the stunt she pulled by taking his product. But this relationship is slightly complex by the fact there's feelings involved, and with Tariq being Diana's first, there's going to be this level of connection, and so this complicates things with a certain character who's going to be moving to Stansfield.
I tried so New Haven's getting to be such a bitch.
Well, then you should do something about that. You know, Stansfield, they got a nice robotics program. Just saying.
So this brings me full circle to the beginning of this video where we broke down trust, friendship, and loyalty, and Tariq feels like Effie is the only person who he can trust now that Tasha's gone, although he does have a phone in Yasmin's bear, and that's something just to be mindful of. But Effie was the one who got rid of Lauren, and so this really complicates things when and if Tariq finds out the truth, although Effie will argue she did what she did through unconditional love, but there was definitely a bit of selfish motive to have Tariq for herself, as well as getting rid of a snitch, a plan which by the way Cane and Brayden were a part of. But Lauren meant a lot to Tariq, and her death definitely hurt, because he does feel somewhat responsible. So this is where I think is the perfect time to bring in Lauren's brother, And just as a quick reminder, this is when Lauren's brother was mentioned in season 1.
Felt like he needed to take the most classes, be in the most activities, be at the top of every list. Yeah, except he started taking psych meds to cope. Then eventually it turned into other drugs. Then he just had a complete breakdown, losing touch with reality.
The reason why I think it's worth mentioning Lauren's brother is because we've seen it far too often in the world of Power, where they name drop a character early in a series for them to only appear later on. And I don't think this was just a coincidence, because he was also someone who turned to other drugs and had a complete breakdown, and he was said to be in a facility. But what happens when he learns the truth about Lauren's death, especially being someone who lost all touch with reality? So Lauren's brother is someone who we may not have seen, but could definitely pose a threat to Tariq at some point in the future, maybe in season 3, 4 or beyond. Now, moving away from those who are closest to Tariq, a constant thorn in the St. Patrick family has been Blanca Rodriguez, and she returned at the end of season 2, so no doubt the threat of law enforcement will always be there, because just like Tamika once said, bodies continue to pile up around Tariq St. Patrick, and someone else who can't stand bodies piling up is Cooper Saxe. For the most part of season 2, Saxe has been battling the demons of switching from prosecuting criminals to defending them, and what was a major turning point was when he learned about another death, Lauren Baldwin, although a big part of him turning is also his feelings for Jenny Sullivan. So by the end of season 2, he had enough because of how many innocent lives were being lost in the process, because anybody who gets near Tariq St. Patrick either ends up dead or in jail. There was Jabari, Carrie, and then Lauren, albeit not all of them are solely Tariq's fault, but he has had some part to play in all, just like we saw in his nightmare. And so now I've made a point of how Tariq has to be wary of those close to him. Cooper Saxe is definitely going to be walking on thin ice, because he did say he was going to help Jenny and essentially be her inside man. But let's not forget the small matter of Theo Rollins, who I do expect to be released, and that's going to further complicate things for Saxe. So there is a lot to consider apart from Tariq St. Patrick. Now, something that works for Tariq is working for the Tejadas. He's been able to move with a lot more freedom, and it's easier to lead the game while working with the Tejadas than if he was working for someone like Milan or Jason Michich. But Power Book 2 Ghosts do need to introduce a new connect, because Monet killed Rico in season 1, and Mecca was a CI, and so I am expecting a new connect to be introduced, and that may complicate things for Tariq, along with a few new characters. Now, this was Obi, who's a young man schooled in Britain who knows his way around a gun, but is equally comfortable in a boardroom, and with Brayden set to be in a boardroom a lot more in season 3, that may just be a way of how they continue to sell and clean their cash, but Obi sounds like someone who could be an adversary for Tariq St. Patrick. But having said all of that, one thing we can't forget is what Tariq's been through in Power, from watching his sister being killed by Ray Ray, to being beaten by Vincent and the Italians, to arguably one of the coldest characters in Power holding him at gunpoint. He's also learned some valuable lessons about the game, trust, and loyalty. Although he is still learning, people around him need to be careful, because although they know he's killed his father, Tariq St. Patrick has been through a lot, and they don't know him like we do. But that's a breakdown of the threats and enemies to Tariq St. Patrick, and where we can argue his biggest enemy is himself, but he's got a lot more threats around him that he needs to keep an eye on, from the Tejadas to law enforcement and characters he believes he can trust. So drop all your thoughts down below on Tariq's enemies, and of course if you are new to the channel and you haven't done so already, then remember to smash the subscribe button if you want to see everything Power Book 2 Ghost and Power Universe related. But as always, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.